Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Lance Sexton, undisclosed location out of Arkansas. Katie Watucky, good to see you both.
Yeah, had a good weekend. Glad to see you too.
It's great to be here, Bob. Notice the restaurant chairs turned upside down behind
me. We constantly get new people. These are certificates. You can document your training. This, of course, qualifies training. SBA and your auditors ask for documentation so that there's, hey, we love to ask polls. Number one, will your institution accept PPP loans through August 8th? I know we're going to talk about that, but the president did sign this, what, on Saturday, Katie?
On Saturday, yes.
So we are official?
Yeah, it should be open. I believe they started accepting loans again at 10 a.m. Eastern.
Okay, very good. And about half. Good.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lance.
Well, I'm not surprised by the results. I mean, I think the PPP program is still a great program. I think if they could get P4 passed, Bob and Katie, where the minimum fee is higher, you'd see a lot bigger number. I really do. More participation and more loans.
Since you brought that up, I don't see it on our script. Katie, what is the status of P4? Do we know?
P4 has still not passed. The Congress is supposed to be in about 2 weeks since there was the holiday, so we might have a little bit of a break until they actually get to look at that. But it does seem like it has a lot of bipartisan support right now.
Well, yeah, and remember, PPP extension was passed unanimously, which is unheard of in Washington, D.C., Lance.
Well, that's, again, I've made this comment before. We have legislators that have never been able to work together until PPP came out. Suddenly they found a way to get together and agree on things. And honestly, I think the extension was passed just to get us to an opportunity for P4 because, Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't P4 going to extend the program through the end of the year?
Right. So this one extends it to August 8th, and then the P4 would extend it to the end of the year, and then SBA would be allowed then, if there's still money, to extend it even further on their own without the help of Congress.
Kate, either Tuesday or Wednesday, let's pull up the stats. I know that small business owners are very high on the approval scale. I think they're right behind the military. And in terms of, they're certainly higher than Wall Street bankers. So let's pull that up and see what, obviously, the politicians in Washington know how to read those polls. So, hey, we do have this in the dashboard. Today is the day to start recertifying. Everyone needs to recertify. And let's start with the question, and then we'll go to what you need to do.
And this is an important annual ritual for SBA lending institutions. And, of course, the numbers, if you have to ask this question at the end of the week, it should be incredibly high.
Right.
But this just recertifies your access to Cap Access financial system. The downside to it is if you don't do it, you'll log in about a month and it won't let you in.
And Joseph, go back to the poll results, please. There we go. Yes is 47%, no 31%. And I do know that we do get institutions from time to time who aren't even signed up into the system. Don't feel bad, especially if you're a smaller volume lender. Lance, what do we have to do to get set up? So there's a two-step process. Number one, you need the account, and number two, you have to recertify. So let's start with the basic. How do we get an account?
Well, you're just going to communicate with SBA to get set up on Cap Access, and of course, the only way you could submit a loan without having Cap Access would be a hard copy submission to the GP Processing Center.
Right.
You want access to the Capital Access financial system because that's what gives you access to E-Tran origination and SBA 1, which is certainly the most efficient way to put an SBA loan into SBA system.
Lance, go through the logistics and how to recertify, and it's just sending an email, correct?
Yeah, your authorizing official is going to go into the system and recertify those users at your institution. And again, it's an important part of the process. I would encourage you, if you're not the authorizing official, to find out who they are and give them a gentle reminder that, you know, July is the time to recertify everybody that's using E-Tran and using SBA 1.
Lance and I have a different opinion about this. I believe the authorizing official should be someone from IT. Lance, you believe it should be at the SBA department level, manager level?
Well, it could be either or. I think it's just real important to pay attention to your emails from SBA if you are the authorizing official, and don't let, August 7th pass without getting everybody recertified.
Yeah. So very good. Anyway, that notice is attached. You have a month, but as Lance said, better sooner than later. Do you agree? And also, obviously, we're going to talk about this, but Treasury has announced or disclosed borrower and lender information for loans over 150. And do you agree with that decision? And Katie, when did they release that?
This was released this morning publicly, but looking at the file seems to have been completed on the 2nd.
51% say yes, 38% no. Lance, where do you fall in that?
Bob, honestly, is kind of a non-impact other than, well, not non-impact. The impact, Bob, is I'm going to be real curious digging through that gigantic Excel sheet, just looking at what different lenders in our area of operation has done. So it's, from a perspective of somebody finding out that we participated in PPP and did some over 150, that's kind of a non-issue. Most banks probably are going to have some loans on this list.
Lance, and I'm sorry, Lance, go ahead. I'm cutting you off.
But it's gonna be real fun, Bob, to dive in and take a look at lenders in areas that are similar to mine and see what they've done. I had another banker ask me, would they ever release this list? And I said, no. The Treasury Secretary said no.
No, he did say no.
Yeah, so they have, they dug their feet in the sand, Bob, and now they've taken their shovel and got them back out. They did release the information. Quite frankly, Bob, this, even though it's not technically this, it's a grant. So releasing who received these, I don't see a big problem with it.
Yeah. Katie, let's talk logistics. First of all, if someone wants to get a hold of this list, how do they do that?
So the easiest way and the way I accessed it is on SBA's PPP page. They have a link to all of their reports that have been coming out weekly, and it just will normally tell you the loan data in a little PowerPoint. This week they did update it just a couple hours ago now, so that there's a link for loans over $150,000, and you would follow that link. It'll take you to a form of Dropbox that will give you this list, and you'll have to download it and unzip the file to see it. But we will also be making this list available on our website, hopefully later today or tomorrow.
Katie, the loans only 150 have been released. What percentage of the loan population is that?
Right. So when they were discussing releasing this originally, they were saying it's going to be a pretty small percentage because 150 is fairly large in this case. It looks like to me somewhere between maybe about 7 and 10% of the total amount of PPP loans.
Lance, I'm a smart SBA department manager. I want to market to this list. I find someone on there whose loan was not forgiven. So now, therefore, the payments kick in. Can I pay off a PPP loan with the traditional 7A loan, Lance?
right now, my answer would be no. Unless there's some changes and some additional guidance that come out, um, I don't think you'll be able to unforgiven PPP loan, be able to refinance that with another SBA loan, although I think a lot of institutions would rather do that because they could get personal guarantees and collateral. But unforgiven loan's still going to have 100% SBA guarantee on it.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Anyway, feel free to download that. Katie, how many loans are on this list? How big is this file?
It's a huge file. I think at least I don't know the exact size. It's a very large file. And unfortunately, that's why we weren't able to list it in our handouts. But Joseph did just send a link through in the chat. So if anybody needs to access it, that's a great way to do that.
Great.
The fun thing, Bob, the fun thing is there are going to be participant lenders throughout the country who spend quite a bit of time looking at this spreadsheet to see what everybody did.
Well, we were thinking about doing rankings, and then we decided, nah, we're not going to do that because we don't have the loans under 150, which are the majority of the loans. So we're just giving you the raw data, and you can manipulate it as you wish. Time to put your interns to work.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about PPP. When did the president sign the extension? Well, we talked about this, right? Did he do it at Mount Rushmore, or did he do it at the White House?
From what I understand, he did it at Mount Rushmore, but I haven't really looked into it too much in depth. I just know he did pass it. So then, of course, today they reopened E-Tran, and we can now make PPP loans again.
We got an email from Jim regarding our discussion Lance and I had about accounting. I'm not going to read through this. This is something you may want to give your CFO. The important thing is the last line, or second to last line, says either way we expect most PPP fee income to be recognized in calendar 2020. This came from their CPA, and I'm not going to go through the accounting on that, other than looks like you could recognize it in 2020 and leave it up to the bean counters on how to classify that and how to document it.
And you know, the thing we talked about, it'll have a positive impact on many banks' financial performance during the year 2020. But there are some loans, the unforgiven loans, that will extend into 2021. There are probably going to be some forgiveness that extends into 2021 as well. Those loans that are forgiven and the Treasury pays you off, you'll be able to recognize, at least that's my understanding, that'll be recognized this year, and that should be a majority of the loans.
So if you're updating your budget for the balance of the year, take that into consideration. Definitely get together with your CFO and your accountants on that. Talk to us about, Katie, your article this morning.
So this morning I wrote this article about small business opportunities that are coming since we've had COVID-19, and the new businesses that are doing quite well. And the Main Street America put together this list, so I can't take total credit for it. But there are some great stats in here about certain businesses that are going to probably continue to do quite well during the next couple of months. And one of the interesting ones would be retail bike sales are up 121%. So, and that's not just bikes themselves, but also bike repair and things like that. I think people just want an alternative to a gym. And I think gyms are still closed in some areas. So that's probably part of the reason for that.
Yeah, and what 25% of members said they're not going back to a gym. And Lance, Katie, I have a wandering eye. Have you looked at those e-bikes? For someone in my age bracket, they're pretty awesome.
They actually, Bob, have a longtime friend of mine that is in this business. When I was SBDC director, I helped him write his business plan. I helped package his initial SBA loan. Had a conversation with him last Friday, and his comments, he's a pretty big bike dealer, and his comments were perfectly in line with what Katie's reporting. He said his sales are double what they would normally be for the last quarter, his sales were double in the bike category. He also sells kayaks. And he said kayaks and camping equipment sales are significantly up. He said about 75% increase from the previous year. So, I mean, there are categories that are doing incredibly well during this crisis.
Yeah, and I think what that is we need to throw out the old playbook and take a look at these industries and say, what is going on in the last half of 2020 on a bigger picture, because we all read the same things. Unfortunately, it looks like it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Well, and the nice thing about Katie's report here, Bob, many of us are trying to get back into the regular flow of SBA lending. These give us some categories to take a look at. You know, grocery stores. If you had an opportunity at an SBA loan for a grocery store, looks great. Outdoor centers, looks good. There's some categories.
Yeah, I mean, that's, there are definitely winners and losers in this interesting times. Hey, Chris points out, Lance, and this may be, he may have hit it better than you and I did. So why would one want to refinance a PPP loan with a 1% rate into a 7A loan at prime plus 2 3/4?
The borrower certainly wouldn't. It would be advantageous to the bank because it would allow a bank to capture personal guarantee and collateral. From a borrower's perspective,
well,
the
only
incentive. Well, the big incentive, Bob, would be extended maturity, which would result in lower payments. But guys, you can't right now. You cannot refinance PPP loan with a 7A loan. That could change, just like everything in SBA lending.
Joel says PPP loans not yet forgiven are blowing up our debt ratios in our current borrower application. Should we be waiting to close any 7A loans until after funds are forgiven? And has SBA released any guidelines on that? He says, quote, wishful thinking. We're still waiting for the June 30th guidelines, right, Lance?
Well, and like I said, we're all trying to get back into the regular flow. And these PPP loans are having an impact on debt service coverage calculations for regular 7A loans as we move forward. Time for forgiveness to start, and I think all it's going to take for forgiveness to start is SBA to say, hey, participant lending institutions, here's where you submit it. And as I've shared with you, I've continually looked to see if anybody has a portal open, and everybody's still, because we don't know how to send it to SBA, everybody's still in the category of we're waiting for further guidance.
Justin asked a great question, which I have not thought of. So, Lance, what are you seeing for changes of ownership with sellers that have a PP loan on their books? How are you approaching this?
Oh, that's interesting. You've got a seller with a PPP loan on their books. That's something I hadn't thought of. That's a fantastic question, because how does it transfer? How do you consummate the transaction? I would guess it is possible to pay the PPP loan off, but I don't know why you would want to.
Yeah, and again, it's business. It's for employees. It's not. There's no personal guarantee, so it's a true business loan.
Well,
great question, Lance. I mean, Dustin.
Here's the other kicker in that, Bob. You've got a business acquisition loan. They've got the seller has an existing PPP loan, but the buyer needs to close by September 27th to take advantage of the CARES Act payment. There's a lot of interesting scenarios that are going to pop up as a result of PPP.
I think that's her way of saying we have no clue.
No.
But it's a great question. And maybe if you solve it, let us know on how you solve it. Hey, Lance is doing his webinar next week on Main Street lending. And I know you're starting to put together the PowerPoint on that. There's a lot of good stuff in there, isn't there, Lance?
Well, but I want to emphasize Wednesday, Bob, we're doing a purchase demand kit, how to get paid by SBA on the guarantee, which I think is going to be critical information as we go through 2020 and into 2021, you're going to want your institution to know how to get paid on the guarantee.
Great. And of course, we have our training that is starting for summer training and, of course, our reports. Lance, it's always good to see you. Katie, thank you for your insights. We appreciate it. And thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time. Thank you all.
Have a good day.
Have a great day.